You're listening to the From Grassroots to Glory podcast, hosted by Didier Lumiere, providing an in-depth look into the behind the scenes of the Victorian Athletic League. Welcome back to the From Grassroots to Glory podcast. It's been a few weeks, and that's because we're right into the heat of the 2023-24 Victorian Athletic League season. I'm certainly very much enjoying it. I hope it's the same for you. We've been seeing some fantastic performances, but being hard into the season now doesn't mean we have to stop learning about those involved in pro running and the greater athletics landscape of Australia. Today's guest, Jarrod Hill, is the CEO of SportEng, the Australian field of play company who have designed a number of athletics tracks that you've probably run on previously, including Proclamation Park in Ringwood, which is of course the home of the Ringwood Gift, Sydney Olympic Park, QSAC, and they were also involved in the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games surface. So they've got a little bit of experience, it's safe to say. We speak with Jarrod about the engineering behind a world standard athletics track, what unique elements SportEng brings to the table, and how SportEng is leading the way for the next generation of Australian athletes. But not only this, we also get to learn about the man, diving into his life as CEO, his passions outside of the business. What are the core elements of a modern day world-class athletics track?
Yeah, I guess we look at it from an engineering perspective, and one of the fundamental things is having a pavement that has a long design life. We've seen too many times that an athletics track get built and then 5-7 years down the track it starts to move because they haven't got it done right. So from an engineer's perspective, the fundamentals is getting the pavement right and the supporting infrastructure such as drainage. When it rains, you want the track to be able to drain. A lot of what we do is heavily dictated by what is now World Athletics, previously the IAAF, for the first good almost 20 years of my life designing under IAAF, now World Athletics. So a lot of that dictates the geometry and the falls and distances from an athletics track. So from an engineering, pavements, drainage, and then it's probably the track surface, self-explanatory around how it performs and how it assists the athletes. I've walked over countless tracks and you can feel the difference between a hard track, a soft track, and you can just understand how that would positively or negatively impact the athlete. So, from the ground up, it's probably the pavements, drainage, and then the icing on the cake being the track surface.
Sure. So, a lot of athletes, when they're running on a track, 8 lanes, 10 lanes, they see the colour of it,
yep,
and they think that's it, that's the track. You mentioned they're a hard and soft track. You can tell the difference when you walk on it. What are the variables that come into play that designate this is going to be a harder track versus more of a softer track?
Yeah, there's a lot of science behind it, and I'm not going to profess to know the ins and outs of the chemistry behind it, but it's really down to the different composition of the rubber system itself. So there's different systems, like there's a prefabricated system. So Mondo, you're probably familiar with the Mondo, which is a prefabricated, rolled out, manufactured in a factory. So construction tolerances wise and materialistic wise, you're going to get high level of homogeneous consistency through the profile. So you've got that type of system. Then you've got in situ systems, so that a liquid applied on the day. So it's made up in layers out on the track as they're building it. So what dictates it is a lot around the energy restitution, how much the system compresses and then releases the energy back. You don't want too hard where you get no give back. You don't want it too soft where you're literally trying to pull yourself out of the track. So it's around that rubber, having that energy restitution and the ability to spring it back. And when we deal with Australia, we've got probably the harshest conditions to grow to have a rubberised track system in high UV, and we've seen a lot of times systems break down because of the UV degradation. So having a system that has a proven track record of performing in our climate is a critical thing. So we've seen tracks start to liquefy. So they used to be so they used to be rubber, and they start, if you sit on it and twist it, it actually becomes almost like tacky bubble gum. And so after a year, I think the track we looked at after 10 years, the chemistry just started to break down, and what happened was water got in there and it starts to create a vapour, and it starts to react with the chemistry in the rubber, and then you get this sort of putty-like chewing gum. So and it was quite a high. It was a state venue. I won't name which one.
Sure.
So it's really around the science behind the product, having a proven track record of use in here, and dealing with our climatic conditions.
So that's a modern world-class track.
Yep.
How does that compare with the technologies that were seen 10, 15 years ago, perhaps?
Yeah, if you look at the evolution of track systems, and we're still doing it. We've still got grass tracks, which are obviously the first type of track. Everyone just ran on grass and didn't know any better. Then we evolved into cinders type tracks, so granular type material, which again didn't really provide a lot of assistance to the athletes. And then in Australia, particularly in the 70s, we introduced what we call rubberised bitumen tracks. So bitumen you see on the road, having large chunks of rubber blended in to try to soften it a little bit and allow the spikes to sort of penetrate it rather than sort of sitting on the surface. And then in the sort of 80s, we started seeing in Australia, particularly the rubberised tracks. And so the rubberised tracks has evolved over those 10, 15 years. Again, a lot of it's the chemistry. But in the last probably couple of years in particular, we're starting to see the sustainability conversation really come to the forefront. Some of the suppliers are now using renewable products in the manufacturing.
What would be an example of a renewable product in this sense?
Yeah, so Polytan is a company that's doing that on our shores, and they've got a gel-based system that has special herbs and spices, if you like, that they probably don't share. But it's got about 60% of renewable material, so that might be renewable rubber from, so it's not virgin manufactured in there, so it might be recycled from another use. Starting to use bio-based organic material, so instead of using petroleum-based to create things, they're now using sugarcane as a replacement to generate that. So they're aware of the conversation around the environmental and a lot of this. So its performance has continued to improve, and we're seeing that in some of the times. But you're probably going to reach a peak where you can't get too much out of the system before it starts becoming negativity. Like you might get real springiness out of it, but at the same time it loses that energy to get that energy back again. So
there's going to be some sort of drawback to every positive that comes out of it.
Correct. These things are tested within a millimetre of their life these days. So they're always trying to find something that gives them something without being a negative, as you're alluding to.
Sure. And you touched on the times are getting quicker and quicker.
Yep.
The most recent world champs, we've seen a huge number of world records being broken, and we've got Paris on the horizon coming. July, August?
Yep.
No doubt, a lot of pundits are saying there's going to be a lot of records broken there. That's also to do with the track, do you think, or has that got a bit of a mix between that and the science around training an athlete as well?
I think it's probably a mixture of track, the science, and the footwear. There's no doubt. I said that the rubber it's only get to a peak where you can get positive between it before it starts becoming a negative at the same time, and it starts to cancel itself out. So there will continue to be evolutions around how much benefit you get. Some systems they say can only be run in one direction because the way that they're manufactured, particularly prefabs, they've sort of got web-like ridges on the back of it that when they compress, they actually go that way. If you run it the other way, it supposedly slows you down. So, you hear athletes talk about fast tracks, slow tracks. I can understand that from the hardness perspective.
Because a hard track would be faster, correct?
Yeah,
in most cases.
In most cases, if it's a real hard, you would get no benefit from it. So might as well be running on a road. So there's what athletes at the amateur level probably don't appreciate, and is around the footwear and the relationship to the footwear. You see at a lot of amateur levels, they wear spikes and the needle, like really pointy spikes, and that actually got spikes into the rubber. So they're losing that energy and then having to force themselves out of it. So the actual benefit from the footwear is the ones that have a bit more of a flat spike, so a Christmas tree or a pyramid type spike that has a flat, so then it compresses the rubber and then you get that pushback. So you don't want to spike into the surface, you want to push it down to get that responsiveness. So there's a lot of, I imagine, science around that relationship when it comes to footwear and the spikes. And as you alluded to, the continually evolution of how fast you can push the human body with sports science is continuing to evolve. So I keep getting surprised every time they break these records.
Yes, it's a very fast-moving industry in terms of the footwear, in terms of field of play design, and as you said, sports science. Every day something new is coming out, and the coaches are rapidly
changing their metrics and everything that they work on with an athlete, and you're seeing the results.
Yeah. So I mean, at some point in time, you think they've got to reach the maximum where they can go with beating speeds, but you see it in the pool, you see it on the track. Somehow the human body keeps breaking barriers.
It'd be interesting to see what happens in Paris, because there's some fantastic athletes coming through, especially in Australia, but let alone even America. Their sprinters are always on the cusp of greatness, and for so many years Usain Bolt blocking them out the way. And this is they're showing some good times. So it'd be a competitive competition.
Oh, no doubt. No, I mean, and there's, I guess the fourth part is just about the athlete on the day. How they're primed. Are they ready to go? Is their mindset there? Have they got a niggle that's going to prohibit them from getting their speed? So I no doubt they'll continue to break records in the short term at least.
For sure. So May this year, almost 10-year anniversary for you.
Yep.
You've been around coming on to 10 years. Many other sporting field of play companies in Australia. What makes Sport Eng stand out amongst the rest?
Oh, what makes it stand out? I said one of our biggest benefits, I think, is from we're engineers predominantly and supported by specialists, whether it be an agronomist, irrigation from natural turf or those type of things. So we apply the engineering principles and apply it to the sports fields. I've almost been doing sports for 20 odd years, and that you learn a lot from the engineering realm that can apply the benefits to it. So that's probably one thing that separates us in our day-to-day business, and it's our core business. We do sports 100%, and we don't deviate away from that. That's our sweet spot, and we enjoy what we do. So and intimate knowledge of the sport governing body requirements. The World Athletics, for those who ever want to go read a book and fall asleep, if you were to read the rules of athletics or the World Athletics facility guidelines, some of the hardest reads, but having read it for almost 20 years, I know I've got an in-depth, ins and outs of gradients, distances, different products. So we've got a really strong understanding of the sport governing requirements.
Not just athletics that you guys focus on. You were the ones that helped develop and design, of course, the Deakin Warm Ponds campus. You were involved with the Junction Oval redevelopment. What other sports have you touched in over the 10 years that you've been in business?
Yeah, pretty much any sport that's external we've dabbled in. Tennis, hockey, athletics, natural turf, all sports. So it's been a great journey, and we keep looking at, we've been doing some bit more BMX, which is something new to us. There's always something out there. Tennis is now evolving into padel sports and different type of racket sports. So there's always something happening. We've had, as you alluded to, we've worked on some great projects, and it keeps the team energised. You're not just doing the same old. You might be working on. I've had luck on working on the Com Games up in the Gold Coast. We were working on facilities for the Com Games in Victoria. Unfortunately, they obviously got canned, as we all well know. We've done recently work in America, stadium-wise, Optus Stadium, Adelaide Oval historically. So it's a great mix of sports.
And do you have a preference for sport? Do you have one that you're more prioritise over another in terms of how much you love it, or one project perhaps even?
Not just because this is the sport, this is your podcast, but athletics is probably my favourite because of the complexity of it. It's not just a straight plane like a tennis court or a natural turf. There's so many elements to an athletics track, and while the governing body dictates aspects of it, and it's quite stringent, we've been able to mould components to be better from a facility perspective and how the athletes use it, how it's maintained, and those things. So we're continuing pushing the boundaries, but from an engineering design, it's probably the most complex. Redesign a facility and got down there opening day and saw a couple of hundred kids running around, and I thought, this is great. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I could design a road which people drive down, and what benefit is that really to society? Whereas opening up that AS track down at Geelong, seeing those kids running, being healthy, having fun, families supporting them, I thought, this is pretty special.
And is that something you think about when you drive past different venues that you've worked on, and you see people using it, does that really bring a smile to your face, and you feel good about that?
Yeah, it does. Oh, and I point it out to my kids and go, I designed that grass field, and they go, thanks, Dad. Like, they don't get it. But no, there's a sense of pride around it, and that's one of our core things is, sport is about health. We try to tie it in with health of the environment, so our designs continually try to be environmentally friendly and promote a positive outcome, so using recycled materials, trying to minimise waste generated from the site, but also for health from the users. We're aware of parts of Australia and other parts of the world, you can get quite unhealthy areas. So by having sports facilities that local governments deliver that are open and easily accessible, it gives you a little bit of joy in knowing that you're creating a positive outcome, rather than, as I said, opening up a highway that gets people from A to B, but what is it other than a road? Yeah,
just a journey.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
There's no positive impact of that.
No, I mean, it might get someone there quicker than they previously did, but I personally didn't get a joy out of opening up, designing roads, so whereas I do from a field of play perspective.
And then in terms of looking ahead, we've touched on the ability of a human surely has got to be near its absolute reach. What can you see changing in the next 5 to 10 years? Can you see, not just in athletics, but across a realm of sports, can you see more improvements coming as a result of field of play design? Or do you think that's almost, as with athletics across the board in other sports, it's almost at the peak
of... use facilities is going to change. We're already seeing the informal use of sports facilities in particular, people moving away from structured sport and wanting to be able to, whenever they want to, go down to a facility and hit a tennis ball or run around a track, so that the way that we interact with them is going to be more. So it's probably going to be a breakdown of formal sports and a bit more of an informal. If you only look at the Olympic Games, the introduction of a lot of X sports is coming to the forefront, and we're seeing that not to the X sport level, but we're seeing our facilities evolve to try to make them a bit more sexier. And there's some fantastic athletics running facilities that are not necessarily flat. You're seeing some three-dimensional elements to the track. So maybe from a training perspective, instead of just running around a flat 400-metre track, there's venues in the European region that have an incline element, and you come back down and join back in. Right. So whether we start to mix up our events, if you think of skiing, it's gone from downhill skiing, which was predominantly downhill, to now introduction of jumps and spins and all those things. Can we do something similar to, sex up, if I can use the word again, around athletics? So I think
I'd like to see people doing somersaults and
stuff.
I mean, 100 metres.
There's always going to be a desire to see those people run fast, but I think definitely the way we use venues and facilities will probably change. Maybe not at the Olympics; they'll always probably be the straight and narrow. But we're seeing the Com Games, how that's going to survive after the latest change. So I think the way we use facilities, the way we digest the sports themselves, you're at the forefront of that in regards to helping people see the sport and learn about the sport and be informed about the sport, because generally speaking, we don't have the time to watch it live and we want to see it replayed. So I think, and the user experience, we're seeing a lot more wearable technology embedded in tracks for running times, so split time. So that ability to make someone to come to it and use that venue and learn from that venue about themselves, and potentially even the venue themselves, if they're running around, and can we create kinetic energy from the foot patterns that goes over the track. So I think there will continue to be evolution, probably more in that technological space, and probably the way that we use and digest it.
Sure. Now, obviously, sport is a major passion of yourself. You can hear it when you talk about your projects that you've been involved in. What sports were you involved in as a kid that really built that foundation for you?
I was lucky. I had a good blend of everything, really. I probably started off, believe it or not, T-ball was probably the first sport I can remember. Okay, yeah. Hated it eventually because I don't like long pants and I couldn't wear shorts. So
sure.
When I moved away from that, so T-ball was probably one of the first ones. I had a crack at tennis. Didn't like the individual nature of tennis. I liked the team facility of it, and then probably basketball and football, with Australian rules football, were probably the two things that founding factors of sports of mine. And as an adult now, it's coaching my kids in their sports. Coaching netball, never played netball before. Coaching soccer, never played soccer before. So it's that. Yeah, so I do love all sports. I watch.
And how have you found that transition into those sports that you're not quite familiar with, and then being put in a coaching role? How have you found doing the the learning and finding out about what the best avenues are for that?
I think sports as a whole, the skill sets from one to the other is quite transferable. I'm a firm believer of teamship, moving the ball quickly in whatever sport you're playing, and a defensive mindset, and then evolve into offensive. So that really translates through a lot of things. Yep, got to pick up the knowledge of what you can and can't do. It's very hard for a non-soccer player to try to explain offside when I didn't fully understand it to start with. So, but you just learn, and the benefit of community sports are, generally speaking, everyone's in it for the right reason. It's I've enjoyed it. Sometimes I probably get too passionately involved in it.
Bit of a coaching on the sideline.
I think it's good and healthy. And I said personally, I love helping transfer my knowledge onto not only my other kids but their friends as well.
Yeah. So, civil engineer by trade, correct? Yep. Now you're the CEO of Sport Eng, your own company. You brought that into the market. What was that transition period from the day of graduating uni to the current moment? Just speak to a bit about that journey along the way, what you've come across, and then what led you to create your own company as well.
Yeah, I went to university, finished high school, and I was either going to become a builder or an engineer. For some reason, that was the way my mind was going, and I always figured if I didn't like engineering, I'd potentially fall back to being a builder. So luckily landed a job at Arup, one of the large multidisciplinary engineering firms in the world, with the intention of doing normal, mundane civil engineering tasks. That was what I had in my set. Had an interview as a graduate position, and as I was leaving, they said, "Do you like sports?" I said, "I love it." And they said, "Well, our team leader does sport design." I said, "Never heard of that. That sounds awesome." So I fell into it by chance, and started Arup, and one of the first jobs was working on the Melbourne Games.
2006?
Yep. So I caught the back end of that during the construction phase in the MCG, the running track there, and the hockey facility at the State Victorian Hockey Facility. So I got some good exposure to that, and just it was a great mix of my passions, engineering, problem solving, and sport. And so worked through that, and had some great opportunities there. Worked through an Adelaide Oval, a lot of state, Amy Park here in Melbourne, Metricon Stadium, Manuka Stadium in Canberra, and we would then. I was at the level where I started feeding calls from local government and private clients who are wanting us to do just small standalone facilities, and that's
in the sporting
in the sporting realm, and the scale of those projects were just probably too small for what Arup would take on as a project base, and so I just saw an opportunity in the market to take all the learnings from top end of town engineering, the high quality, which we stress a lot in our designs, getting it right the first time, challenging the status quo. We took all those learnings and applied it at an affordable cost rate for local governments and the private sector. So thankfully we're still working on the big stuff, but we're now from the big stuff down to the grassroots. So started off the two of us, myself and my business partner Gray, and we started out in the city in a co-working space where you pay for a desk space. We brought a mate on as a drafter, and I think his first desk was held up with a couple of milk crates and a bit of timber across the front of it for the first couple of days. He doesn't let me forget about that. He's still with us, almost 10 years now. So started off the three of us. We've got an undergraduate, built up to four of us, and the evolution of probably my role as CEO just grew from around, I guess, knowledge, passion, seniority, and business development skill set. Am I a good CEO? Probably not. But
I have to ask staff about that.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. But we're 10 years in and we're still around. One of our strong core things is create an environment where people have fun and want to come into work. So yes, it can be stressful at times with multiple deadlines, but at the end of the day, hopefully they leave with a smile on their face. We work together and try to create that team environment that you have in the sports realm. So I continue learning as a role CEO. I don't think you'll ever know everything about every role. So I think as we spoke at the very start, around mentors, I've had some great mentors around me, and I'm a firm believer of I'll never know everything, so I need to surround myself with people that I can get that answer to. So if a client doesn't know the answer, I'll be able to pick up the phone and ask someone else. So I've had some really great relationships in the industry and continue to build them and learn from others.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't always come easy in business. Over the 9, almost 10 years now, what major challenges have you had to overcome, both personally yourself in relationships with staff and clients and what forth, but then in terms of just general business concerns?
Yeah, I think early doors, my probably biggest struggle was work-life balance, was getting that right. I'd say a workaholic. I like working, and I can just get the blinkers on, and before I know it's 7 p.m. in the evening, I haven't left my desk and it's still working, and you've got to get home to the family. So probably balancing work-life was probably the biggest struggle, and letting go of responsibility. When it is your company, you want to manage everything. You want to be client relationship. You want to be doing the design. You need to. So as you evolve, you need to let go of some of that responsibility. So they're probably two of the biggest things I struggled with personally and professionally. And to some extent, COVID helped relieve some of those. Opened our eyes to the ability to work from home. I probably was more of the old firm of got to work 5 days in the office, 9 to 5. I need to see everyone, to trust everyone that the work's getting done. Fast forward to where we are now post COVID, and we're only in the office 2 to 3 days a week and 2 to 3 days a week at home. So that requires a lot of trust back to the team, and I think they've earned the trust, and so it's something I had to let go and put my faith in the team and the senior team around me. So with some things we fail. Communication, I'm not the best communicator, so at times you get the messaging wrong and you've got to backtrack and reword it and those things. So but I'm an engineer, so I'm not a wordsmith, so yes, it's something you've got to keep. Give me some numbers, I'll crunch those for you, but give me some words, not always my strong point. So it's something we continue to do. So that's probably been the evolution, struggles along the way. Thankfully our clients are great. It's a small industry, the field of play industry as a whole. So the guys I was working with 20 years ago in the industry are still there 20 years on. So you build really good relationships. So if you're in trouble, if you do a mistake, they don't burn you. They don't throw you under the bus. Generally, they say, "Hey,
very inclusive community."
Yeah, it's a two-way street. They go, "Hey, you've missed this bit here. We need to do this." You go, "Thanks for picking that up." Likewise, from our perspective, you haven't done this right. Can you do this? And it's a two-way street. So relationships is a big thing in what we do in the industry. So so struggle-wise, it's just probably always keeping your eyes open and always being open to learning. That's the one thing I've learned, is that you're going to make mistakes. No doubt we've made lots of them. It's how you recover from them and correct them is probably what you're best remembered for.
Yeah. One of the things you touched on right at the start there, work-life balance. That's such a popular terminology, and everyone likes to dive into it. How it should be balanced. Should you do 8 hours a day, 12 hours, 16, whatever it is, right? How did you find that? How did you overcome that challenge right at the start? Are you trying to figure that out? Of course, you said COVID helped, being able to be at home a bit more. Coming into now 2024, how does that look for you work-life balance-wise?
Yeah, so age has dictated how I do that. Go 10, 12 years ago, in a week I might fly to Adelaide, Perth, Sydney and back, and often they'll be back to Melbourne, so it'd be covering lots of distance and covering lots of hours, pick up at 5 a.m, getting home at 9 p.m. type thing sometimes. So youth can blind stupidity at times. I look back at it now and you go, geez, how the hell did I do that? And I've had the same driver for the best part of the 15 years, and he tells people, I don't know how Jarrod survived doing those things. I look back now and go, how I kept it all together. But work-life balance it's a term people throw around it, and you're right. It's and I thought working from home was going to blur those lines and make it harder, but it's probably made things easier in fact to show you can do things, and flexibility. When you are working home, I'll start work most days around 6 or 7. I'll get a good chunk of work done. The kids will get up. I might spend half an hour helping them get ready to take them to school, and I can jump back into it. So you're able to redistribute some of the time, and that's what I've sort of found, that I can leave work at 5, be home with the family for a reasonable time, and then if I need to, I can pick up an hour or two when they're in bed at the other end of the day. So I probably don't sleep as much as I'd like to, but it doesn't seem to impact me in any shape or form.
So then what would be 3 tips you would give to people to balance? Sounds like one of them would be prioritising your time into chunks and find time where you can. One of the great examples there, once your kids have gone to bed, now you've got time to go back to work. What would be 3 tips? If that's not one of them, what would be your 3 tips?
Yeah, the biggest one that I've learned is you can say no. I used to be a yes man. Can you do this tomorrow? Yes. Can you do this tonight? Yes. And you feel like you've got to say yes. And the biggest thing I learned was say either no's not wrong. You say, no, I can't do that. I can do it tomorrow, or yes, I can do that, but not until tomorrow. So being able to actually not just jump, and someone says jump, you say how high. So that's probably one of the biggest things, lessons I've learned there. As you alluded to, breaking up time. I struggle with attention spans at times, so I need to get up at like 10:30 and have a hit a tennis table, or go for a walk just to because if I don't, I'll just start losing track of where I am. So being able to break my day up into useful periods of time, and I said if I get up in front of the computer at 6, I could really get a good solid 2 hours of uninterrupted time, and then I know I'm going to get interrupted, and then the back end. So trying to effectively allocate my time best around how I can operate, but how other people around me want to operate with me. And probably the third thing is delegation. As an engineer, we're not good at delegating. We see a problem, we want to solve the problem. That's the way we see it. So being able to see the problem and saying, well, that's not the best use of my time, I will delegate to this person to still solve it, come back to me and work through it. So they're probably three other things that I've had to grapple with. If I'm able to say a fourth one, I used to have a fear of cold calling, believe it or not.
Cold calling, yeah.
And if people don't want to talk to you, they won't talk to you. You just got to be happy with the fact that that's going to happen sometimes. And it doesn't have to be a cold call. Just talking on a phone sometimes is an impersonal approach. So, but if they want to talk to you, they'll talk to you. If they don't, don't take offence.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that.
Don't take it to heart.
No. Yeah. So picking up the phone was always a hard one for mine, but I learned that you're able to take it up, pick the phone up. If they want to talk, they'll talk. If they don't, so be it.
So delegation, cold calling, or just calling in general.
Calling in general, yeah.
Prioritising your time into chunks.
Yep.
And then saying no.
Yep.
That's the 4 tips.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
I mean, I could probably rattle on a lot, but they're probably the ones that that I probably have learned to have to grapple with and improve over the journey.
Yeah. And they're very all similarly related to each other.
Yes.
Because delegation is, of course, saying no to tasks and offloading that to someone else.
Yeah.
So that integrates with saying no.
Yep.
Prioritising your time, the same thing. Say no to going off and doing, go for lunch with your mates or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm focusing on my work. I need to get this done. And then, going back to calls again. If someone says no to you and I don't want to talk, that's fine. Don't worry about it, because I don't need to be there in the conversation necessarily.
No, they're all interlinked, and they're probably, if you wrap them all together, it's around time management and just management of what you're doing. So, there's probably a commonality along them.
Fantastic. So, we've got a little bit of a similar thing to Diary of a CEO, where we say the secret question for our guest. So we're going to continue that on. The previous guest was Brett Robinson. So he's a sprinter based up in the Gold Coast, 5-time Store gift winner. His question for our next guest, it was kind of directed towards another coach. He said, what is one non-negotiable that you have in your training program that you advise every coach to include? So obviously you're not a coach. Well, you are a coach of your kids in netball and
you coach your team as around from 100%. A working perspective. So
100%.
I mean, if I take that question, similarity, the one non-negotiable for mine around that similar question is just I have to write a to-do list. A daily to-do list, and then I prioritise. So you might end up writing 12 things, and a lot of them will be the same. I've got a diary. I write a to-do list each day of what I'm doing. Some of them will be reoccurring. And then I prioritise the top 5. I'm not going to get through all of them in a day, but if I prioritise top 5, scratch them off. What I found is prior to bringing it, I go to bed and I have all these things going. Remember this tomorrow. Remember this tomorrow. Remember this tomorrow. And you just sit there going and grapple with.
You can't sleep that way.
You can't. So I found by writing these things down, when they come to me, I go to bed and I'm not worried about it because I know I've written it down.
Yeah.
So something I try to tell my guys is just write them down. And I don't like the digital format because, I could write a digital one and just stay there, and so I don't have to rewrite it every time. Someone will say, well, you're wasting your time 2 or 3 minutes every day rewriting the same element. But writing it down, striking it off, it gives me a good sense of completion of that work. So my non-negotiable is, writing a daily to-do list, whatever it might be, some personal work, whatever your things you've got to get done, is a big thing for mine.
Yeah, I'm very similar with the to-do list. I love to do that. I do it in a digital form. I used to do it on paper. but I just find just more efficiency of time to do it on digital.
Yeah.
And exact same with you. Prioritise 3 or 5 tasks for the day. Get as many of those done as possible, if not carried over to the next day. And you're 100% right. Out of your head, out of mind. You've got it. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
It's on paper.
One of the best things I've heard, and I can't remember who it was that said it. You've only got so much space in your head, and if you've got that loaded with different thoughts about I've got to get that task done, and what about that one? There's something else that's come in. You can't have space in there to think and think thoroughly about what it is you're doing. So by just offloading that, you push it to one side. You know it's there. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's one of the best things to do.
And if you're having a terrible day, you go, God, I really can't get into anything today. You look at your list and you try to find a low hanging fruit just to make yourself go, I've got to call this person. Right, I'll just call them. And at least you cross something off. So you may have done nothing.
Slowly build it up again.
Yeah, you may not have achieved anything today, but you've at least crossed one thing off and you go, well, at least the day hasn't been a waste. And I just found it, I tried digital. I'm still a bit old school. I like the physical nature of seeing it and writing it. No one else can read it because I've got terrible handwriting. Yeah, I'm also strong around goal setting. So I guess my question would be, what's your number one goal for the next 12 months for the next speaker?
Number one goal for the next 12 months.
Yeah, so what do you want to achieve in the next 12 months?
Fantastic. Well, Jarrod, look, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.
Appreciate you hosting us in your office as well.
No, appreciate it.
Got a nice little setup in here you might be able to see it on the cameras. We've got 3 jerseys around, so we've got, what's that, USA Cricket?
Yeah, so
that's a very recent one, right?
Yeah, one of our teammates, former colleagues actually played for Cricket USA, so he represented them, so I got him to sign that. So
fantastic.
That opened the doors to the USA market. But yeah, the benefit of a sporting company is we've got sporting paraphernalia around the office. So
there's Don Bradman on the wall.
We've got some Muhammad Ali
tennis table as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. So that's the perks of having sport around. So. Fantastic. We've got a running one up there. I think it's Roger Bannister's breaking the
speed limit.
Yeah, for the mile. So
there we go.
So it's a bit of fun.
Fantastic, Jarrod.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.